plan today is to supply a basic introduction of table. I'll just go through the various properties and styles of the table widget. Then I could also perhaps try to show how to integrate table with a PostgreSQL database, which is also considered a basic feature of table. Then we'll move on to some comparatively intermediate features, such as applying colors based on conditional logic, expanding. So we have rows in table, and we don't presently have a feature to expand the rows. So there is a workaround, there is an excellent workaround for that. So that I'll be demoing. Then also filters. So in table, we have different types of filters that we need to apply. These are advanced filters, not the filters that come with ToolJet table. So we'll do a demo of how to implement that. Also, there is an advanced feature. When I say advanced, and it's referring to relatively advanced to the basic stuff, which is bulk update, which is to make changes to cell values in table. And when you press a button, you need that all of those changes to be reflected in your database. So that is what bulk update is, and I'll also be trying to demo an application which has bulk update. Yeah, so let's get to the ToolJet platform. By all means, interrupt me and ask questions, Teja, if there are any. So this is the basic default table that comes with ToolJet. By default, it comes with, as you can see, a set of features. Like you have a search bar, you have an advanced filter button where you can supply conditional logic on filters. You have a download button which downloads whatever data there is in the table. You have a pagination, you have a number of records. You can also edit and modify your column sizes. So these are the default basic features that ToolJet table comes with. We'll move on to the most vital property that you have to supply for a ToolJet table to work, which is obviously its table data. So I have a slide here which might be more visible. So what you see on my left is the table data that we have to supply for the table to render the data that you see on the right to work. So the data has to be in this format. It is a JavaScript array, each element of which will be a JavaScript object. And if you observe the first element, it is ID1, name Sarah, and email Sarah at Expandable. If you look at the first row of the table, it is ID1, name Sarah, and email Sarah at Expandable. So as you can deduce, each element corresponds to each row of the table. And as you might have already observed, the table header column names are being derived from the ID name, from the key names of the object that you are passing in, which are ID, name, and email. That is exactly what is reflected here. So that is how you supply table data. Obviously, the next question would be, how do we configure the columns? How do we change, for example, if we need to change the name of the ID column, how do we do that? So there is a full configuration here for the tables. You can change the table ordering. For example, here you can see I just changed the ID to the second column, and you can see that reflected immediately on the table. I will just change it back. If you click on any of the column configuration setting, you can see a pop-out with even more configurations. So let's try changing this header name to identity instead of ID. As you can see, that header name is immediately reflected. Obviously, the data is not there because we have to specify the key from which the data needs to be taken, and identity, because we changed the column name to identity, the key now needs to be specifically mentioned, which in this case is ID. So I'll just specify ID, and you can see that the data is coming back. There are different types of columns that we can have in ToolJet, such as basic string. Then there is text, which is used to display large quantities of text if there is that. So there is no issue of trimming or scrolling or words breaking or anything like that. Then you have obviously badges, tags, drop down, multi-select, date picker. It will be a bit verbose to go through each of these, and many of you might already be knowing most of these. So I'll just skip that for the time being. Okay. So that's all about columns. Basically, we have this is an important feature of ToolJet, something called action buttons. We can add a new column called actions where there are these buttons, and to these buttons we can apply various event handlers. For instance, I can just show an alert and make it display the email of the row which I clicked. So I'll do something like this: selected row and email. And as you can see, the button on the row in which I'm clicking, its corresponding email is being alerted. So this is not just for alerts. This is also for any other action that you have in ToolJet. You can use these buttons. Then we'll just quickly go through all the miscellaneous features, options that we have with ToolJet. Server-side pagination and client-side pagination. Obviously, as you can see, server-side pagination comes without a bound, and you can connect the pagination even to some action that you like. We also have the ability to like show and hide many of the features. So you can basically hide all these buttons, hide the search box, for instance, and even hide the pagination. So you can have a table like this if you wish, which is completely bare bone, if I may call it that. Yeah. Obviously, we also have a loading state, which makes a loading icon show in the table. And then again, we have our styles, which are pretty much self-explanatory. You can supply the border radius. We can select stripe table, for example, which is a better design. You can increase the cell size, for instance. So this is a more spacious table, as you can see. Yeah, so these are the basic uh, properties and styles that come with table. Many of you might already be knowing these things, so that is why I'm skimming quickly through that. So if there are any questions, you can surely ask.
Yeah,
So,
Shefin, we have two. So if you can open the chat window, you can actually read them out and address them.
okay. Uh, the first question, so I am seeing a question to make Windows installable, so I will address that later. So if one of you can note it down. Um, so the first question I'm seeing is there a way to set the maximum row height in cases where one of the columns has a text that could be really long? Some kind of vertical scrolling perhaps. Yeah, so we don't have a maximum maximum row height. What we can do is, as you can see, I have selected the cell size to spacious. And I'll increase the, uh, I'll supply some long text here. Yeah, so basically, you need to set the maximum rows or row height there. There is no option to set the maximum row height right now, but what we can do is select this overflow option and set it to scroll. So you can see that this height will always be consistent and the scroll will be available. At the moment, you only have two options for a row height, which is spacious and compact. Compact will be like this and spacious will be like this. So that is what we have at the moment, and I'm happy to consider improving by adding new features in this area. Uh, and moving on to the second question, how does a filter work with a server-side pagination? How does the filter work with it? Oh yeah, so server-side pagination, you don't have to, where is it, server-side pagination? Oh yeah, so in server-side pagination, I would recommend you to implement custom filters. So filter does work in server-side pagination. I mean, in the exact same manner that it works in client-side pagination. But obviously, when you use server-side pagination, you will, for instance, have something like a SQL query or something that you query the server, and inside that query, you can apply a filter. So if you need to only select the user, the people with a letter S in them, then I would recommend you to use the corresponding SQL query or corresponding API configuration for that. Because if you are using this particular filter, it will only filter in the client-side data that you have. It will not go to the server and filter, as you can probably imagine. That is my suggestion. If you're using server-side pagination, by all means, try and use filters. Implement custom filters using your SQL queries or whichever data source that you're using. So these are the two questions that I've seen. So I'm moving on. Yeah. So as you can see, this is a demo skeleton application that I've created. I have a PostgreSQL data store that I've already connected with. So I'll just try and create. I have a column called feature request. I have a table called feature requests that I've already created. So let's try fetching that from feature requests. Yes, yeah. So we have a set of feature requests. Forget about feature requests. This is a set of data that I just fetched from the PostgreSQL database that I just connected with. I'm creating this query. Actually, I'm just running that query again. I'll drag in a table instead of this sample data. I'll call the queries data like this. Obviously, as you can see, the ID has come in, but the name and email is not there. That is because there is no name key and email key in the data that we're supplying. The keys are title and description. So I'll change these column names to title. I'll change this name to description. Yeah. So you have the table populated with title and description, as you can see. So this is a very basic example of how we can integrate this ToolJet table with a Postgres database. As you can see, it's a simple select query, and I'm just plugging the data to the table. So let's go ahead and let me show you an application that I've already prepared for you. So this is a bit of a big app, so it will be a bit too tedious and verbose to implement it live on this call. So yeah, so this is the application. The idea behind this application is that people can visit and request for new features from ToolJet. These are just dummy data, testing data. These are not real business data. So my table has an ID, a title for each of the feature requests that you would give me. Each feature request should have a description, a priority. Then whomever is visiting the application can upload and download the features. For instance, if so this particular feature has only one vote. It's called ABC. I'm upvoting it. And you can see that ABC now has 2 votes. I'm upvoting it again. And you can see that ABC has climbed all the way up here with 3 votes. So that is how this application is intended to work. You can see that there is a priority that we can supply for each of the feature requests. To add a feature request, just click on this button. Supply the name, whichever name that you want for the feature request, whichever description that you want for the feature request, and select the priority. If you think it's an urgent feature, then you can select very high. If it's not an urgent feature, you can select very low. As soon as you click on the button, you will have that feature added. Yes, so that feature is in here, new name, new description, very high, and there are no votes at the moment. One additional feature that I've built is this filter. Right now it's on all. That means every feature request is shown. If I only want to select the very high feature priority feature request, you can do that. The only very high priority feature requests are there. Okay. So this is the table. This is the application that I've prepared for you for this code. Let's go through some of the features which are considered a bit advanced that I have implemented in this application, which is applying colors. Okay, so we have each feature with a certain kind of priority set. So let's try. Let's try and apply colors to this votes section. So if the number of votes for a feature is greater than 0, it will be on green. And if the number of votes for a feature is less than 0, it will be on red. So how do I do that? I'll go straight to this votes column settings. You can see that there is a text color available there. I also have a variable called cell value that is made available by ToolJet. So as you can see, cell value 7 is here. So it is one of the rows is having 7. So if I'm applying a condition here, if cell value is greater than 0 or greater than or equal to 0, we say green. So this is a CSS color cell. You can supply any CSS approved value in here. Otherwise, I'll say red. Right. So as you can see, all of these features are now in green, except for this one, which has a less than 0 votes. Let's try downvoting on another feature. Yes. So that feature also is now red. So this is a way using which we can conditionally color the text inside each of the cells. We can also use the cell background color to conditionally color the cell itself. So I'll just go ahead and try that. I'll first make it a classic table so that there are no default colors applied. Then I'll go to votes. So instead of this one, I'll apply the same logic in here. And as you can see, the cell itself got colored. So this logic will work hand in hand with every other feature. So even if you are, let's say, selecting a filter like this, your this coloring logic, everything will persist all the same. So this is a reliable way of implementing conditional coloring of table cells and table text. Let me just try downloading this just for curiosity, and it works, as you can see. So this whole downward coloring and filter feature are all working hand in hand. Yeah, so that is a coloring feature. I'll just check. Okay, I have some questions. Can the cell values be editable from the table itself? Yes. So this is a bit of an advanced feature, and I'll be trying to demonstrate that by the end of the session. So I'll definitely address this question as soon as I get to it. Expandable rows, yeah. So I don't have, so I already have implemented expandable rows in here. So I don't have anything to show you hands-on. So I'll just demo it to you. So as you can see, we don't have a method to expand the rows built in, but this is more like a workaround that we apply. So as you can see, I have 3 action buttons: upward and downward. Upward and downward are in there, and I have another action button which I am just calling plus, and I'm setting the position of that action button to left side. What it does for me is that this action button will go in here, it will have just this plus icon. So it will kind of look like an expandable option for the row. What I have done with that action button is that I have applied a handler. So on click, I'll show a model which I have already created, and I'll run a query which will fill comments related to this particular feature inside the table, inside the model. Let's see that in action. So these are the comments for the new feature that we just created. So as you can see, there are no comments. So let's try creating one. Yes, that comment has been recorded. So that is how this works. So you might be wondering how. So if I click on this particular feature, for example, only the comments for that feature will come. If I click on this feature which we have just created, the comment that we just created come. So how can we make sure that whenever the user presses on the button, only the row for which it was clicked? It is obviously based on the selected row that is exposed by the table. So you can see that there is something called selected row that is being exposed by the table. So the moment you click on any of the action button, the corresponding row will be exposed as selected row, and I have all the information of that row in this variable. So the second event handler which happens when I press on that button is a run query, which runs this query called fetch comments. Let's observe what is there in fetch comments. You can see that this is a simple SQL query to fetch comments. The only catch here is that I am supplying the ID of the corresponding feature as the ID from the selected row. This is doing the trick. This is what is making the table inside the model fetch only the comments related to the table, the feature request that we are selecting. So yeah, this is how expandable rows can be worked around in ToolJet at the moment. I'll go to the comments. Column the user. Is there a way to add a column where the user can select multiple tags options from a drop-down? Something similar to Airtable multi-select. Okay, I'm not very familiar with Airtable multi-select. So I'll have to move on from that question for the time being. Perhaps Teja, yourself can take that question. I'll just generally answer that the columns are not dynamically configurable at the moment. We have to manually configure them. We are considering implementing a auto-generating of table configuration, but it is not there at the moment. I'll move on to the next feature. Yeah, filters. One simple feature that you might see here is the priority filter. If I select low, for example, I only see the task with low priority here. So this is very simple. I'm simply using an SQL feature. So this is the fetch features request, the fetch feature request query using which I'm populating the table. And as you can see that I have added a where condition here. And in that where condition, I'm simply supplying the value of this priority filter. So if it's set to low, then the query looks like, as you can see on my screen, select star from feature request where priority equals to low. If I change it to very low, for example, the query changes to select star from feature request where priority equals very low. So that is how this filter has been implemented. If anyone requests, I can go ahead and try and implement another filter for some another column. That would be kind of simple. So I think one of the members of the audience asked how would we use filters in server-side pagination. So this is not server-side pagination, but this is still server-side. So as you can see, I'm using the data source itself to apply that filter in a custom implementation mechanism. Here, because it's an SQL data source, I'm using the SQL method for it. So that concludes filters. Basically, this is the equation for filter. Add any input widget. Here it is a drop down. It can be an input field. It can be a text field, a text area, a number input, a multi-select, anything. Any input widget will do. Plus SQL in the case of PostgreSQL or whichever data source that you are using, its query language or its query mechanism, its query apparatus. Yeah, so this is the last and perhaps the most advanced thing that we are showing today. Bulk update. I think one of the members of the audience asked how we can update from the table, update values from the table itself. So what I'm going to do is let's try and make it so that the users can update this description. So I'll select the settings for description and I'll select this option called make editable. I'm making it editable, and as you can see that we can type anywhere in the description right now. So I'll change the some description to awesome description. And please observe that two buttons have showed up. One is save changes, one is discard changes. So if you go and check the table inspector right now, you can see a key called data updates that has been populated. And you can see that there is only one entry inside data updates, which is this. So this particular feature request having ID 1, title new, had been updated, and the updated values of that row is being shown in here. And because we know that description is the only column that is being updated right now, we only have to check description. As you can see, the new description that I've just typed in is being shown in here. So if I may just pin this here and I change it to something else, you can see that the description immediately reflected on that key. So what we have to do now is to create an SQL query that converts this. So I have a slide which shows this. So in here there is Sarah, Jane, Sam, and John was the initial data. I changed Jane to Ahsoka, which is a Star Wars name. I'm sorry, I'll drop Star Wars names all the time. So it was Lisa. The name was Lisa, and I changed it to Ahsoka. So you can see that the data updates has turned into that particular row with the updated name. So what we need to do is convert this data updates object into a set of update statements in SQL, into a set of SQL update statements. So let's try and do that. I'll also just change another description to yet another description. Let's try and I already have the query here, but let's just try to construct that query ourselves. We'll call it new update. Obviously, let's try to obtain that data updates in here. Table one dot data updates. Yeah. So I have the data updates objects in here. So it is an object. The key of each will be the cardinal status of the row, which is if it's nth row, then n is being displayed here. So I just need the values of that. So I'll just do a simple JavaScript usage, which is object.values. Now I have the changed feature requests in here. Because I know that description is the field that people are editing, because that is the only editable field. I have to create a query that looks something like update feature request set description equals whatever description is here, where ID equals whatever ID is supplied in here. So let me try and map this. So I have an array now. Let me try and map it to SQL statements. So update. I hope you're able to see the SQL statements being generated in the preview here. Update feature requests is my table name. Set description equals it has to be the update dot description. So this update variable contains each row that has been updated. Yeah, so if you observe the preview, it says update feature request set description equals whichever new description that was supplied. I also have to supply a where condition to identify the ID of the row, which will be available in the update variable like this. Yeah. So as you can see, we have two update statements now. Update feature request set description equals new description where ID equals this. Also another update statements corresponding to the two updates that we have made in here. So obviously this is a array right now. So I'll have to convert it into SQL statement. So I'll simply join it with a semicolon, making it a valid SQL statement. So this is an SQL statement, semicolon, another SQL statement. So when you run this query, both of these SQL statements will go into the database. So I've created that query. Now I have to connect the save changes button to that query. For that, I'll go to the table again. I'll go to the events of the table, and I have an event called bulk update. So whenever the user clicks on save changes, this bulk update event is being run. I'll run query, which query? The query that we just created. So we have connected the save changes to the query. I'll also just make sure that this new update query is connected to the fetch feature request query, which will update the table so that whenever a user makes a change, if the user edits any of the description, the table is reloaded. So let's try saving changes. Yes, so as you can see, the new description has come in here. These are not the old descriptions, these are the descriptions that we set anew right now. So let me just release it and let me just review it. Yeah. Are there any rate limits? Somebody has asked. Are there any rate limits for this? So, so I'm answering the question from the table. So there are 10 requests in each. There are 10 rows available in each page. Whatever comes in, go to the next page. If that is what you mean by rate. If you're talking about the query, SQL query running rates, frequency and all, I will not be able to answer right now. I'll follow up on community Slack channel. Let me just update the description of this question. And I'll try to save it. Yes, I was able to honor that question with a good description.